All right. Welcome to this episode of the Victory Podcast, where we explore life, leadership, and journey. It's my distinct pleasure to have teammate and friend and colleague, Lauren Crandall, on board. She's an ex-Olympian and a phenomenal leader, and I'm just absolutely pleased as punch to have her joining us today. So, Lauren, thanks so much for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we just ran through like all of the experiences and the amazing accomplishments that you've had over your years of experience. And what I'd like to do is kind of start at the beginning. Can you walk our listeners through like who Lauren was as a young child, where you grew up, and some of the impacts that led you towards that path to focusing on becoming an Olympian?
Yeah, I would love to. Not to take you back to my birth order, but I am the youngest of four. So I have an older brother and then two older sisters. And I think I say that because as I've gotten older and reflecting on my sports career, I realized that being the youngest of four always put me into competitions against my siblings, because if I wanted to play with them, I had to be good enough to play with them, or if I wanted to be involved, like I just wanted to be doing what they were doing. And I think that's where it comes into like wanting to be part of a team, right? The youngest of four, I just wanted to be part of the family team. Hey, what are you guys doing? I was that annoying little sister of like, oh, Lauren, go away. I'm with my friends. I'm like, I want to be here. I want to be with your friends. So the youngest of four, I was born. Go ahead. No.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What's the age sort of gaps between you and your three siblings?
Oh, God bless my mother. When I came home from the hospital, my mom had four kids under the age of 5. So we're pretty much 2 years
Wow.
apart, except my sister is 17 months, and then it's 2 years and 2 years. So when I was born, my brother was 5, my sister 3, my other sister 1, and then a newborn. So, and my dad traveled Monday through Thursday because he was in sales. So my mom, don't know how she did it. God bless her. We are all alive and healthy and good contributing members of society.
3 girls and a boy. That's a great environment for a young man to grow up in my opinion. I'm sure he's an amazing person.
Oh yeah,
I'd like to meet him someday.
he is. I
And
mean,
your
he's
sisters
got,
too.
now my brother has 4 kids of his own.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was raised
Yeah.
primarily by women. I had some substantial men in my life, but the women, I think, and I seek women leaders and mentors in my life. I tend to have a better alignment with them. I think a lot of it has to do with my relationship with my sister growing up. So it's very cool.
What's the age difference of you and your sister?
She's 2.5 years older than I am. Sorry, Kirsten. That's blasted out
Okay.
for everybody because she looks about 10 years younger than me. At least that's what she says.
So that's all that matters. Look and feel, you know?
So yeah, so that relationship of, being very competitive and hopefully healthy competition with you and your siblings, not driving your mother too ragged there. And then like, how did it fall into sports for you?
Listen, I am a redhead, and typically we are fiery, right? I was born on St. Patrick's Day, so I couldn't be more of a leprechaun.
Wow.
It has taken me a long time in my life to have a healthy competitive drive. I think back to when I was a kid and we were all growing up. The dumb competitions we had, and how, like, I hated losing. Hated it. I remember I was playing ping pong with my brother down in our basement. I was probably, I don't know, 6 or 7, so he was 5 years older than that. And we were playing ping pong, and I remember he didn't have a shirt on because when he beat me, he made sure that I knew I lost and he won. And he was all my siblings are great athletes. He was, I think, laughing at me or doing something, and I took my ping pong paddle and chucked it as hard as I could at him. And I can still see him like turning and having it like hit his back, and still just turning around and laughing at me of like I could never get to him, which always made me like drive more and more. So as a kid, healthy competition, let's say sure. Trying to figure out the whole like, it's okay to lose as long as you're learning from it. But that wasn't until I was in my 20s where it was like, okay, this is a process. Let's learn Let's make it more of a process instead of results driven. But I can see crazy growth from that stupid ping pong story all the way up to, the last game I lost in my career at the Olympics, and just the immense growth and maturity it takes from the emotional standpoint of being okay with certain things. It's kind of, I think it's hilarious to look back on, but I
Yeah.
mean,
So
you could
Lauren,
name whatever
Lauren learned
age.
the,
If
the approach of the underdog at a very young age. Many of us are fans of
uh,
the underdogs, and yeah, being the youngest one in the family, that competitive edge that probably drove you to kind of build and grow and evolve out of that underdog status. Awesome.
Yeah, totally. And my dad, and I still do it with all, I don't have any children yet, but any kids that I play with are my nephews and nieces. If we're playing pig in the front yard basketball, right? We're shooting hoops. I don't let anybody win. That was my dad's thing. He never let me win. And I will never forget the first time I beat him in a game of pig, because I knew that I truly beat him. It wasn't like I let her win, she's having a rough day. It was like I earned this, and I'm going to take so much pride in it, because it took me, I think I was 9 years old when I first beat my dad in a game of pig. So I find it to be, my siblings never let me win. So when you do get that victory, all that you've done to earn it, and it's that much more sweet. So I think that was my competitive drive that I loved. Like, again, I was not a very good loser. I didn't always act right. God bless my parents for still owning me and trying to teach me that games should be fun and it's okay. Don't worry about the results, because they knew how competitive I was. But that was such a big driver of what I enjoyed. It was, and I mean, I'm lucky my parents put me into sports early. I think it was just to get 4 children to run around, get them onto a field. We don't care what they're doing, but let's expend some energy there. And I just developed a love for team sports early on. Loved it. And that really just set my path as to, it wasn't like, I want to be an Olympian someday. I always feel bad saying that, but it was never my dream or my goal. It was always like, every weekend I got to hang out with my team. We got to practice throughout the week. It was just more time you could hang with your friends and have a competitive drive to achieve something together.
Yeah. And I love that lesson of not taking it easy on, your younger family members, and just because your parents and brothers and sisters didn't take it easy on you. I mean, I grew up in the same environment. And I think there's a great takeaway for any leaders, mentors, or parents out there to like, I have a distinct memory of like when I was teaching my son how to play chess. Of course he wasn't beating me, and then I could see his frustration, and I was like, well, what do you want, GP? Do you want me to take it easy on you? And he's like, no, I don't want you to. So, well, you can't have your cake and eat it too, young man. So I'm going to continue to give you skills to work on, and then eventually someday you'll beat me. And try more recently now, because my cognition's not the same as it was 10 years ago. You may have a better chance. And then, like you said, when you do achieve, when you even come close to beating someone who's not taking it easy on you, that that's you working on it. That's you improving, and that builds self-esteem and confidence and all those things. It's so important. Handing people a win, I think that's the biggest insult you can possibly do to somebody. Yeah, it's a great lesson there.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I love sports, is because I just feel like, first off, I think team sports can teach us so much about who we can be, how to work with other people, and just so many life lessons that go into it. But if we know that there is one truth as we live our lives, it is going to be, we are going to lose, we are going to be down, we are going to be frustrated. And not that I knew this as a kid when I was playing sports, but I now know that having the tools in your toolbox to deal with those frustrations, um, getting used to it, not the losing part, but basically making it part of an everyday of like, okay, I'm putting all of my effort and energy into this one goal, and I'm going into a game and we lose 4-0. I'm like, sometimes that's just the other team is better, or you didn't play well, or whatever lesson you can take from it. But the frustrations and the emotions that we feel from that shouldn't be discounted because it was just a game. It's kind of like, okay, let's feel this truly, how bad does this hurt, and what do I need to do so that I can try and be better? Because in a game of sport, why I love it is you, even if you have an underdog and you have someone who's supposed to win, you still play the game. You know, it's not like, oh, you guys are supposed to win, so automatically there you go and we move on. You play the game because sometimes there is an underdog story.
Yeah.
Sometimes the person that's supposed to win does win, but there's tactics and there's just so much that goes into it that goes beyond just you're supposed to win, you're supposed to lose, and the emotions that all the players in both teams need to deal with, I think, are life skills that we can take into whatever we're doing outside of the sports pitch.
Yeah. Do you think, talking about the underdog philosophy, do you think there's I mean, I know the answer to this, right? Mindset is the huge part of that, right? But I think there's two tickets for the underdog. There's the underdog that believes they're the underdog and doesn't have a chance of winning. And those people probably have 0% chance of beating a superior, competitor. And then there's the underdogs that believe they have what it takes. They believe in themselves and they believe in the outcome that they can achieve over this overly, competitive team or team that's got better caliber players or stuff like that. Can you talk a little bit about that mindset, and have you experienced that at all within your realm of competitiveness and what the outcomes were?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I have been on both sides of the coin with underdog or not. I know. So in high school, my senior year, we won the state championship. Then I go into my freshman year at Wake Forest, who, when I went in 2003 was my first year. The year prior, Wake Forest had won the national championship. So I go into college onto a national championship team that I had nothing to do with. Number one, I didn't know that they were that good. So that was a bit of a surprise and a shock.
Wow.
But I go from winning in high school, I probably lost 5 total games with my sophomore, junior, and senior year combined, into the number 1 team in the country in Division I field hockey, and being asked to repeat that. And then we won my freshman year and my sophomore year. So I basically had won championships 4 years in a row. 3 years in a row. My senior year in high school, my freshman year in college, my sophomore year in college. So I was not the underdog. We were the ones that are expected to win. And there's a certain mindset that it takes with that. As we were up on top, it wasn't the arrogance of we're just really good because we've always been good. Wake Forest came from a program that was nothing, that was a club program, and for 20 years worked really, probably for 12 years, worked really hard to get to the level that we were then at. And then it was performing at that level. So we were on top. It's hard to stay on top because you have all those wanted underdog stories, right? Well, my sophomore year, I made the women's national team. So I'm on Team USA for field hockey. And that's when I was really faced with losing on a consistent basis. So you're going from winning and being used to that and making winning a habit and being part of championship teams to a U.S. team that's ranked 13th in the world, looking to play better competition. And when you're doing that and playing people who are better than you, you lose a lot. And it's about learning that process. So we, on the U.S. team, took the underdog mentality 100%, and we ran with that. It gave us some successes. There's a few stories that I think of when we're playing like the number 2 team, Argentina, in the country for the qualification for the 2012 Olympics. We were number 13, total underdog story. We had no reason to give them a game. They had the number 1 player in the world, Luciana Amar, and we play them in Guadalajara, Mexico, and we end up beating them to qualify.
Yeah.
Because for the year leading up to that, I mean, it was awesome because for that year leading up to it, we were training that underdog mindset. It was that mentality, right? They're bigger than us. They're better than us. They have the greatest players, but we work really hard. We know what our strengths are. We might need to play the perfect game, but we're going to train so that we can play the perfect game when it counts. That's probably my greatest underdog victory. What happened thereafter, with a lot of ups and downs, is our USA team played our best when we were that underdog mentality. Well, as we started to climb the ranks and we're getting it to seventh, sixth, fifth in the world, we start to be getting away from that underdog, right? When you're fifth in the world, you're expected to beat most of the teams you play, besides the four that are ahead of you. So our challenge was, can we keep that underdog mentality, that chip on our shoulder, that they don't think we're good enough, they don't think we're skilled enough? Can we still keep that same mindset, even though we're expected to win? That was a big challenge, but something really interesting when you talk about mindset. To keep that underdog mindset, to keep that chip on your shoulder, even when you're expected to win. And I think we did that pretty successfully in the last few years of my career. But it's so funny how much mindset can fall into whatever we choose it to be and whatever we train it to be.
Yeah, I agree. And I grew up southwest rather, of Philadelphia. And I swear Philly is probably the biggest underdog, fan base in the country. I think it stems from the Rocky Balboa syndrome is what I call it, right? Because that's, but
Okay, I could
that
see that.
mindset's so important. But what you talked about, I think, which is really critical, is that self-awareness and being honest with yourself as that underdog, right? Because I've talked about before is those superior competitors, the people that are ranked number one, they're probably ranked number one because they've got a lot of skill and talent. They've got the heart, drive, maybe resources, and they're working hard. They're putting in the work and they're making sure that they're pro at everything they do for that organization. And then I think there's underdogs that are like deserve to be the underdogs because they're not doing all that work that number one ranked is. But then there's those underdogs that are self-aware. They've got that mindset and they say, I don't want to be the underdog anymore. And I want to model what those number one people are doing and then turn it around on them and become superior in my own right. And then, like you said, being able to hold on to that piece and learning from that and saying, hey, we cannot lose that underdog fight, because otherwise the next group is just going to supplant us by using the same techniques and tactics that we did for drive and mindset. And I think that's where leadership comes in, is keeping that mantra alive in a team that's making success over success so they don't get stale. And I'm sure you have some
100%.
you have some experiences with that, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, it's that growth mindset of the most dangerous. So let's talk world rankings, right? To me, the most dangerous number one world ranked team is someone who wasn't always there, had to work to get up there, so still has the mindset of having a chip on their shoulder of like, okay, listen, I didn't always have these victories. I didn't always have everything given to me. I had to work to get here, and I'll be damned if I let anybody take this from me. So I'm going to keep that Rocky Balboa mentality, right? Even though I'm the best in the world. But if my mindset is still one of growth and of learning and how much better can I be, with that chip on my shoulder, I now have the skills I need to be number one, stay number one, but I also have the mindset that's going to keep me trying to grow and staying open and not complacent with number one is the only place I can be, and I will stay there for as long as I can. Number one, you got to keep growing, right? You need to stay challenging yourself. I think, and I have so many examples throughout my career, when you're winning, you don't always make the changes or challenge yourself or your teammates the way you need to. So my junior year at Wake Forest, we were undefeated in the season. I hate going into postseason undefeated because you may not have really been tested, right? And this is a sign of leadership, whether it be coaching or of the upperclassmen. When you're winning, there's a lot of things that can bubble under the surface where it's like, this isn't so great, or this isn't so great, but I don't want to disrupt what we have. We're winning. It's okay. Well, the first time we came up against adversity in postseason, which happened to be in our ACC tournament, the first sign of adversity where the team that we were playing just destroyed our game plan. We had never been through that before. We hadn't prepared for it. And that's where we got our first loss in the postseason, because so much of the rumblings that were kind of just bubbling under the surface that we didn't address because we didn't really want to rock the boat because we were winning is what came back to bite us. So we were complacent, right? We were number one in the country. We were undefeated. We had everything going for us, but there weren't the challenges that I look back now and I wish that we had addressed certain things that went unaddressed because, we're fine. We're undefeated. anytime I see an undefeated team, my advice to the leadership is always don't let an undefeated result or a win take you away from the growth that you need to make from each game. And that's addressing some of the hard things we don't want to address, but in the end, we're going to be better for it.
Yeah, I love that. And that drive is so important. And, one of the techniques we used in the SEAL teams, I mean, I think I probably implemented it in every block of training that I brought troops that worked with me through, was like we trained to a standard, right? So once the platoon or fire team or whatever was executing that standard just about flawlessly on automatic, now it's time to change the game. And then we set them up for failure multiple times. We stress them to the point of an unrealistic outcome or an unrealistic target set or whatnot, to get them overwhelmed. But also then when we pull it back to reality, then they take that standard that they kind of did like no problem at all, and they just move it up to another level because now they've learned that they actually have more capacity than just the standard. And then we ratchet it again, and we just keep doing that until we find this sort of flow state where they can execute, and continue to grow. And I think for champion mindset people, that's what it is, right? You circle around the debrief and be like, okay, that was great. How can we do better? What do we do wrong, need to make improvements on? And then you collectively come up with agendas and drives to kind of get there. So I don't want to go all the way back in the time machine, but we kind of got you to the nationals, right? Which is obviously the pathway to the Olympics for you. But I just want to quickly revisit sort of maybe some pivot points, in your high school career, was Wake Forest, was the driver there, field hockey? How did you find field hockey? And then that path from nationals team to Olympics from there, if you can cover that in a little soundbite.
Yeah, in a nutshell. So I was actually a soccer and basketball player. Those are my two sports growing
up. All right,
up.
that's what I wanted to get out of it. Yeah.
One. Yep, and then it was basketball. I moved in 7th grade. I moved from Pittsburgh back to Philadelphia. And when I went there, I had a group of friends in Philadelphia when I lived there before. They were all my soccer teammates. And in the fall...
Huge soccer state, by the way,
my middle school... Oh, yeah. Well, first off, huge field hockey state. I mean,
right.
We're the biggest field hockey state. So.
Yeah.
So when I moved back, all my soccer teammates needed a sport to play in the fall because my middle school did not have a girls' soccer team. Now that makes it seem like I'm very old. I'm not. It was a boys and girls team, but girls didn't really make it. And so girls high school ball was in the spring. So I needed a sport for the fall. They were all playing field hockey. I had just missed field hockey season, and they're like, oh, there's this field hockey sport. I'm like, okay, if you guys are playing, I'm playing, right? It's being the youngest of 4 and just wanting to belong. So I'm like, all right, if you're a bird, I'm a bird, I'll play. So 8th grade, I picked up a field hockey stick and played for my middle school team. And tactically, soccer and field hockey are very similar. It's 11v11. The pitch size is about the same, except in field hockey, you can't use your feet. You have to use the stick. And in soccer, you can only use your feet. So I started playing, and then 2 years later, I actually learned the rules. My high school coach, Jeff Harding, who was a former Flyer, so he was a Philadelphia Flyer, played ice hockey for them, and turned that mentality of ice hockey over to the high school field hockey program that he got me involved in. But he saw just some, I guess, raw talent in me. He loved taking soccer players and teaching them the game of field hockey. So my sophomore year, he kind of took me under his wing, taught me the rules, taught me some of the tactics, gave me an opportunity to go to a summer camp with the team. And from that point on, my sophomore year, I think because field hockey was so new, I had been playing soccer my whole life, same with basketball. Field hockey was just a new sport with new skills where I kind of, as much as I hate losing, I kind of crave not being good at something and then learning and showing that I can be good. So the development and just the growth, and it was just all exciting. It was fun, it was exciting, it was new. And at some point in my junior year, my love for soccer started to dwindle a bit, and field hockey was just, I started to play all year round. So I played in the fall, I played indoor field hockey, which took over kind of the indoor soccer times. And then come spring, when my junior soccer season was, I was like, well, can I still play field hockey while I'm playing soccer? So it was at my junior spring, I would say, that I started to think, okay, I think field hockey is my sport. I'm gonna dive more into this. I still played soccer. My high school basketball coach told me that I couldn't play all three sports, and I'm also pretty stubborn. So when he told me I had to quit one of them, I was like, okay, you're forcing me to choose between these three sports.
Know where this
He's
is
like,
going.
yeah, you're not able to play. And I'm like, well, then I'm not choosing your sport. If you're gonna make me choose, I don't want to play for someone that's gonna do that. So that was easy. So it was just soccer and field hockey, and then, yeah, my love for that newness, my love for just learning the sport and developing those skills really outweighed my desire to play soccer. And I started reaching out to colleges, and kind of that became where I was looking to get recruited.
So that self-reflection, and it seemed like you were very intentional with your thought process and your intentionality on how you're going to progress through the sports. Was that all intrinsic in you? Did you have that ember, that burning inside of you that you knew you wanted to foster into a flame? And I know you, so I know that was within you, but did you also have some mentors, whether they were directly just your coaches or your parents or whatever else, that were helping to kind of steer that decision-making process, or were a lot of this just Lauren on her own?
So much of the way I tell the story now is because I've looked back on it. But
Right.
when I was playing, I was just a player on the field who loved competition, right? I didn't care what it was. I didn't care what sport you put in front of me. Like, I wanted to be on a team, and I just wanted to compete. I hated losing. I liked winning. So it's a little bit of both of those. But I think my parents probably saw from a young age, obviously, the ping pong incident with my brother, we can always refer to. They knew that I hated losing, and I think they were so concerned with my fiery attitude and how emotionally stable that would or wouldn't make me, that their messaging throughout my entire childhood and through high school was always, are you having fun? Are you having fun? My dad, after every single game, from the time I played softball as a little kid all the way up to like in high school, even on the national team, at the end of a game, when I'm evaluating and like, we should have done this or this, win or lose, he's like, did you have fun? I'm like, yeah, Dad, I had fun. I have some things to figure out, So I think they were the driving force in showing me, hey, there's something more than just the result. Because when I was on a field, I was fully engaged, right? Whatever it took, that's what I loved doing. I loved competing with my teammates. I was very fortunate to have, my high school field hockey coach, Jeff Harding, put me into these programs that would be the pipeline to selection for junior national teams and national teams. So we called it Futures in USA Field Hockey, but that was the pipeline. I didn't know anything. I didn't know college coaches recruited people. I was so ignorant and naive to the scholarship world, Division I sports, and any of that. I was 100% focused on being on the field, having fun with my teammates, and playing the sport. And I'm so lucky that I had my siblings who were going into Division I sports. So they were ahead of me and had kind of done some recruiting process to mentor me, but really my Mr. Harding to direct me of, hey, you need to contact these coaches. You're good enough. You can do this. Because I just stayed naive to like, I just want to play. He's like, well, if you just want to play and you want to play outside of high school, you have to do this, this, and this. Got me set up with the club team, got me involved in some summer camps that took the selections. So I was very lucky that I had siblings who had gone through the process before, and a high school coach that really pushed to get me involved into the right places. Because if he just told me, hey, there's a pickup game on Saturday in Downingtown, Pennsylvania, I'm like, cool, I'm there. I'll drive, no problem. Just looking for venues to play at. And he helped kind of narrow my path as to what I should look at, and if I did want to play beyond what I needed to do in order to get those recruiting opportunities.
That's awesome. And like, can you describe sort of your experience of the differences during the tiers, right? Like, so high school, easy, not easy, but like you've got that component knocked out. You've got coach and mentorship there. You hop in, to college, totally different demographic. You're going to a team that's already at the national level. Sort of what would you say are the key differences between that college level national team to Olympic team? Like, what are your big takeaways from those experiences, and what are the differentiators between those fellow competitors?
Oh, those big leaps stick out in my
They
mind
are big
so
leaps,
much.
right? It's
So,
not just like
high
stepping
school,
through another
oh
door,
my
is it? It's
gosh,
another world, right? I can't imagine.
no. And yeah, and I think that's why there's certain things you should focus on, there's certain things you shouldn't focus on. And if you focus on, from a player development standpoint, if you focus on your love of the game, your desire to compete and wanting to win whatever level you're playing at, those are the foundation skills you're going to have with any job or with any performance. In high school, I think I had made some junior national team camps, but I never went to them because they always conflicted with my team camps. So I was never focused on the selection point of things, which is why like team first mentality always rang very true with me. But my
Yes.
senior high school season, we won the state right. We win the state championship. So allegedly, I've been told I was a top recruit. Again, I was so naive that I had no idea. So I get recruited by a bunch of different schools. I choose Wake Forest. So I go in my freshman year to Wake Forest, who are national champions. So obviously a lot of very good players. And the first day of preseason, we have one of our running tests. I didn't really like running the mile, but I had, you have a whole summer program that you're training for. So day one, I'm like, I want to run the mile. I want to get it over with. Well, I didn't realize that most people wanted to get the mile over with. I ran my best mile time I had ever run in my entire life. Freshman year, first day on campus. I think I ran like a 6:17 mile, which was, I think
Nice.
7 minutes was the fastest I had run previously. So 6:17, best one. I finished last in everybody that ran. And
Wow.
that was my moment of like, you're at a new level, right? Physically, mentally, technically, emotionally, you're now with an elite force of Division 1 athletes. So all the best high school kids on their teams were all coming to these top programs. So now you're with the best of the best, and I think it didn't take me away from the victory I had of I just had my personal best as a mile, right? And I think what we train our mindsets to be in our development as an athlete or as a person, if you have your personal best, but I finished last in front of everyone, what you decide to focus on, right? Am I focusing on that last place finish, or am I focusing on I got the personal best? For me, it was kind of both. Like I wasn't there yet where I'd be like, oh, I don't care that I finished last. In a way, I'm like, holy cow, I just ran my best mile. And holy cow, I just finished last on this team. Like, this is the next level that I'm at. Everyone's bigger, faster, stronger, and they're my teammates. How awesome is it that I'm now going to get to play with them? So I think I was excited for the challenge. I love a challenge. So it was motivating and it was humbling all at the same time.
That's
And
that's a
that was then
beautiful
the next
story.
step when I made the national team.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was because like one is you're very rare. I hope you know. I'm sure you know that by now with all the life lessons that you've been able to learn and accomplish. But to be able to have that appreciation, to know that you just went through that sort of combine, if you will, you had the self reflection, be like, "Whoa, I just finished last amongst all my compatriots, but I got my PR, which is awesome." But you didn't deny yourself. Like you didn't start having the conversation that you're not worthy because you happen to be the last one on this 1 mile run. You recognize it like, no, I deserve to be here. And now I'm going to continue to earn this spot by reflecting on this and growing on it and making it a pivotal experience where a lot of people would shut down. This is one of the things we see, my comparison is SEALs, right? Like I say, the SEALs are the Olympics for the military to some regards, right? Is that like, you'll have people
I
going
agree
through,
with that.
yeah, you have people going through the training that were like rock stars, right? And whatever their activities were in high school or college. And then they show up to SEAL training and they get put on their heels and they're not used to not being the best or whatever else. And they just crumble. They'll be the first ones to ring the bell and quit during Hell Week or whatever else because they didn't have that resiliency. So what I'm tying this back into is you have tremendous resiliency. And I think I believe that if you were to look back on your past, that's what's helped you overcome. Because I'm sure you've had your share of injuries and setbacks and all those other things, but you've continued to drive forward, and that's resiliency. That's what makes us want to continue to drive and push on. That's awesome. And so what about the next gap? So do you have
I got another
from
story
college
right
to
there.
nationals
Oh,
teams?
yeah. Yeah, and I wish I could tell you, because looking back, I now know I was motivated by a challenge. Like I loved, so this next story you'll see of how gross my mentality in loving a challenge is and having it be the motivating force. So the end of my sophomore year, I make our national team, and I was asked to go to New Zealand for a tour with our national team. So this is 2005, so we were going over to New Zealand to play 5 test matches against the Kiwi team. So I went over there, and I think it was my first game. Well, my first game, I don't really remember much. I was like running around like a chicken with my head cut off. It was kind of like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just going to try and work hard and hope I don't mess up that much. But the second game, when I have a bit more of focus and what am I doing, I was playing left back at the time. I was a left halfback, so I was defender on the pitch, and I was going up against a top forward in the world, and I used to remember her name, but now I can't think of it, but very high goal scoring individual, and I was marking her one-on-one, it just so happened, and she did this cutback move where she went up and over, and the ball was coming from my right to left, and I was like, oh, I read it like a book. I'm like, oh yeah, I know what she's doing. I know where this ball's coming from. I'm all in, 100%. I was intercepting this. So I went after that interception ball, and because the movement that she made and the high technical skill that was given, it was a beautiful pass, and I went flying by on the ground, diving for the intercept that I missed. And she received it and went and scored. And it was like I was obliterated. Like I was literally on the ground, soaking wet, because the turf, we water the turf. So soaking wet, looking up as she scores in the back of the cage, and they're like running back. I feel like I'm still on the ground. And at that moment I was like, I love this game. The elite level, like I was 100% so sure that I had read the exact play, which I did, but I underestimated the technical skill of both the receiver and the passer, and it was just the biggest failure on an international stage at that moment. And I was like, I'm in love with this game. Like my sophomore year in college, I was growing to be a top player in the country, so I was achieving, at that level in college, I was achieving. I was separating myself to be one of the best players in the country, and now I'm going and playing other countries with the best player in the country up against those players, and it was just such a failure that I was like, I have so much growth to do. Like I'm now down here. So in college I was up here, which means now I'm here, and the international level's here, and there was just so much growth needed that I was like, I am all in. I'm 100% like, let's do this. So I guess I'm motivated by failures because of whatever that sick mindset is. But
no, that's a growth mindset. You're totally open.
And growth, yeah.
You're totally open. I mean,
I think it's so important, though.
Yeah, that epiphany when you just got, we call juked right on the field, like instead of you bashing yourself, you're like, I love this game. Like, what an amazing reflection to have. Like, I'm going to grow. This opportunity is going to sharpen me. I'm going to be better as a result of it. That's all growth mindset stuff, and a great message for everybody to hear. So awesome.
Yeah, and it's not like it was always rainbows of like, when I lose, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to try again. Like, again, I'm still an angry kid of competition. I hated losing, but those are just the 2 moments that stick out, because you talked about, leveling up, right? When you go from one level to the next, what's that like? And I think some people, if you don't have the right growth mindset, it can defeat you, before you have the ability to accept the challenge and really develop what's needed and become the person and player that you can be. I'm glad I had that skill, but the process of getting to the level that I wanted to be at, and then the process of being part of a team that achieves at the level. I mean, that's adversity, that's pain, that's, it's not always the, ooh, this is so fun losing. That's where you put in a lot of the work. But those two moments in leveling up just always have stuck out to me as the motivating factor of, this is, this challenge is exciting to me and I fully accept it and I will make sure that I succeed.
So the track from national level team, when you started getting en route for Olympic selection, and maybe during the story you can talk a little bit about how Olympic selection goes, because I'm assuming your entire national team doesn't necessarily go. But like fairy tale or grind to get to the Olympics?
Grind. There are
Grind.
no fairy tales. I've never been part of one. So how our selections work, you have a national team pool. So just all depends on the coach. At the time, we had a brand new coach in 2005. He was Australian. So he wanted to keep a squad of like 24 girls. And from that squad, when you have an international tournament, you can usually only select 16 or 18 players for that tournament. So in the Olympics, you can only take 16. So if your pool of girls, we're training full time all year round, right? The Olympics is every 4 years. I hope everybody knows that the people that go to the Olympics train every single day, multiple times a day, so that at that 4 year, when they're at the Olympics, they can achieve. So there was always a saying at the Olympic Training Center, it's not every 4 years, it's every day. It's a grind, 100% a process. Where you're learning the tools of what it takes to go into it. So in our sport, field hockey, there were only 12 countries that qualified for the Olympics. So our challenge, when I got onto the national team, the last time we had qualified in our own right for the Olympics was the 1988 Seoul Olympics. So in 1996, when your country hosts the games, for the most part, you're an automatic qualifier. Right. So in 96, we were already automatically qualified, but we hadn't qualified on our own right since 88. So our goal, when I came onto the team in 2005, and they had kind of revamped the program, they had brought in a brand new coach, a new technical director. We had a 3-year goal of qualifying for the Olympics because we had missed out in 2004 and in 2000. We had missed out by, some would say, like a few goals. Right. So your team has to qualify one of those 12 spots in order to go to an Olympic Games. And then the players that get to go to the Olympics, there's only 16. So when you're training with 24 girls that 8 people's dreams are going to be destroyed. And that's just the nature of most sports, right?
Right, because they're not going to be able to have the runway to get the 4 years later to follow up on the secondary Olympics with exception, right?
Yep, totally. So it's a timing thing. It's keeping yourself healthy, but you got to earn a spot, one of those 16 spots, and then you have to qualify so that your country can go, and then you want to be one of those 16 that gets to go to it. So the national team is the Olympic team if you qualify for the Olympics, but we usually keep a squad of girls, and then every tournament, every tour that we play in, there's always selections.
So you covered 12 years of Olympic competition before you retired. So tell us how that worked out. And then I want to dive into sort of how you found yourself into some key leadership roles, which, we know you were the captain of the women's field hockey team at college, and then how that evolved between, leveling up again into the Olympics, what your experience was there for your first Olympics, and then how it carried on for 2 more Olympics. And do you have, how many people from your squads were repeat, in those Olympics too? Like, how rare is it for somebody to compete in 3 Olympics back to back like that?
So there are, and hopefully I don't get this wrong, but I believe myself and 2 other teammates are 3-time Olympians. So Rachel Dawson and Caitlin Falgowski-Janolfi, we are all 3-time Olympians. So we were in the 2008, the 2012 and 2016 games together. Caitlin was a 16-year-old in 2008, so she was the youngest player on our team, and she actually didn't retire until 2018. So
Wow.
her span, she started at a young age. She was very good at a young age and played. I think she retired when she was 28, 29, probably with another Olympics left in her. But, circumstances are difficult. There's a lot of sacrifices you have to make as, you're training full time all year round at a centralized training program. But when I made the team in 2005, I had veteran players that came back who tried to qualify in 2000 and didn't, tried to qualify in 2004 and didn't. So they had a goal and a monkey on their back of, I want to go to the Olympics, right? Like that was their drive. I was just a young college kid who was like, cool, I get to travel. Like, yeah, I'll go to New Zealand. This is fun. Play a sport. Oh my gosh, that sounds awesome. So I was one of the younger players on the team, and I was lucky enough to have great stubborn leadership in veteran players ahead of me who really drove our goal forward. I hadn't tried to qualify for an Olympic Games and failed. I used their emotion as motivation of, I want to make sure I get these girls to the Olympics, and I'm going to do everything I can to get there. So in 2008, when we qualified, we had to go to Kazan, Russia to qualify. It was freezing, and it was a very interesting place, but we qualified, and we went to the Olympic Games. The 2008 Olympics, everybody was brand new, right? The 16 players that we had, no one had been to an Olympic Games before. It was all brand new. We worked with a sports psych, and we worked with people to try and prepare ourselves, but it's hard to prepare for that elite competition on the world stage when you don't have any veteran experience to rely on for that. So in a way, we were just happy to be there, experiencing the Olympics. Come 2012, we qualified a bit earlier, and so I had higher hopes for us. I was like, I don't want to just go to the Olympics. I want to compete, I want to make a mark. That was my first year in being captain of the team, and that's a story in itself because we ended up finishing last at the 2012 Olympics. A lot of lessons learned there, and then I took those lessons learned in the build up to the 2016 games, and that's really when I feel my leadership growth, I had the most amount of growth from a leadership perspective. Very focused, very goal driven, really trying to take on leading a team to the best of my ability into a game so that we could not embarrass ourselves like, in my opinion, we did in 2012, but be part of the best team that I had ever been part of, because I had a lot of unanswered goals from 2012 and a lot of, man, shoulda, woulda, couldas. And I luckily had another 4 years that I committed to make sure that I didn't have any regrets going in. Yeah. And was lucky enough to have a team of individuals who were kind of on board and wanted to repeat also.
You made a quick mention about the 2008 team and your drive, your personal goal to get everybody to qualify for the Olympic team, right? I think, am I misquoting you there? That's about what you said, right?
No, in 2008, yeah, the veterans who had tried before and they came back and were like, I want one more shot. My goal was to get them to the Olympics. Like, I didn't want to stand in their way, basically.
Yeah, and so like I see that as a huge piece of your growth, because that's who you are. You're an outcomes-driven leader. It's not about Lauren and what you're going to gain to benefit from it. That's what people see in you, that inspiration to bring everybody along for that bigger picture piece. And I'm sure that your coaches really appreciated that, because I think at that level, the team sports is a really challenging dynamic in the Olympics, because it's only the team is going to win. It's not one individual out there that's going to make it happen. It's a completely different mindset from people that are in the individual competition lanes. So I'm sure that's what they saw in you, is you're this inspirational leader that's, direct as well, right? And not going to suffer fools, so to speak, and make sure people are doing what's expected and keeping those standards and stuff. So like so that growth into looking for the next 4 years. So 2012 is done. A little bit, I don't know, not your words, but I assume you're a little bit disappointed with your placement there. But now you've got this opportunity to kind of build and shape.
Understatement.
Yeah, yeah. Because you already, so what we kind of glossed over there, because we talk about it in the introduction, but you were well accomplished. It wasn't like you just kind of found yourself in the Olympics. I mean, you got medals from the national teams, the international, Pan Am Games, and all those others. So like to kind of grow from that experience and continue to seek to raise everybody up around you to achieve this unified goal of the Olympics is really remarkable. And so, did you have conversations with the coach on what your personal dreams and desires were for the 2016 Olympics? Was this something that came from you, or was it inspired from the team and community, or how did that kind of evolve? That conversation for like, hey, would you consider doing another one?
Yeah, that's a very good question. A lot of things just shot through my mind, but I'll say this: in 2012, we had a team that I think was kind of split between veterans of the 2008 team and then really young players. We had a very talented young group of players, and where we failed was playing together as a team, appreciating the sacrifices that every individual was making, so that we could go to the 2012 Olympics. I think from a team standpoint of camaraderie and being able to fight together, be motivated by one another, that's where we lacked. And the shoulda, woulda, couldas for me came from a debrief that we had after the Olympic Games. So we get back from London. A week or two later, we always debrief every single tournament. Well, this debrief, everybody called in on a conference call. I forget who ran it, but basically, a team that was ready to go into the Olympic Games, that were all on the same page, allegedly, started to bring up all these issues that they had with one another, with our process, with how we trained, like all these issues that should have been addressed prior to us competing on the biggest world stage. They weren't addressed. And that was my first full year of being a captain. I was kind of right in the middle. So I had players that were older than me and players that were younger than me. And I should have, as a leader, my biggest failure was the inability to resolve the issues I saw, to address them and to resolve them. And the conversation that we had debriefing on that phone call, that was my big aha of like, okay, I had no idea that so many players felt this way about what we were doing. So from a leader standpoint, I was not tuned in to my teammates. If I'm not tuned into my teammates, I can't help address what these issues are. I can't recognize them. I did not have my finger on the pulse of the group. I think maybe a little bit I could tell, but I didn't know how to address them, and I didn't know how to bring us together. So those were my lessons learned coming out of that call from 2012. That was my move forward of, okay, never again will I not be able to be tuned in to my teammates and what they need on an individual basis and where we are as a team. Our coaching staff got fired after the 2012 Olympics, so you finish last, kind of makes sense. So at that stage, I wasn't 100% of like, I'm going again for the 2016 Olympics. Because all of our coaching staff got fired, I found my role to be, okay, I want to stay involved because we had a lot of people retire. Our coaching staff got fired. I wanted to be the liaison between the remaining players and our executive director and until we filled that gap, right? Until we got a new coach in. So I wanted to make sure that we still had a good team that was excited to come back. I didn't know if I was going to be on it or not, but I wanted to make sure that there was information flowing that when girls graduated from college, because our younger girls all took the year off from school, so they all went back so that they could graduate from school, and I wanted to make sure the national team kept them involved. So I was part of the process of bringing a coach on board, and in 2013 we hired Craig Parnham, who is an English guy, who really was my greatest mentor from a leadership development standpoint. He came in 2013 And the culture that he brought, the mindset that he brought, and what I learned from him is 100% the reason that I view leadership in the way I currently do, and 100% the reason that the 2016 Olympics we finished fifth. And we're kind of disappointed. We thought we could have medaled. We lost in the quarterfinal game to Germany, which had us ending up as fifth. But until he came into the program, my commitment level was just, I want to make sure that the team continues on. I don't know if it's going to be with or without me. I don't know if I'm in for the Olympic Games, but we have a lot of talent, and I want to make sure that they feel good coming back in here. And then working with Craig and to see what he was doing and the vision that he had for our team and the power that he gave the group, I knew it was something that I wanted to be involved in, and I hadn't yet hit the growth milestones that I felt like I could as a player and a person. So that was when I committed to 2016. Let's see what we can do here.
Yeah. So we love seeing and being able to witness a culture change in an organization. Can you kind of go in a little bit and just some detailed points that you think were really critical in Craig, that new coach, being able to change the culture and the goal orientation of that Olympic team?
100%. When you talk about experiencing a culture change, we did a complete, I don't want to say a 180 because it's kind of unclear, but the culture change was because of who Craig was as a leader and as a coach and what his coaching philosophy was. So his role, his coaching philosophy was, I am here to be a shepherd. I want to take whatever you players want to do. You're going to set what goals you want. You're going to set who you want to be, your vision, your mission, your values. I'm going to hold you accountable to them. But wherever you say we're going to go, I'm going to shepherd you in that direction. So you tell me where you want to go, and I'm going to put us on the right path. He has no ego whatsoever. He didn't care who got credit for what. He wanted to make sure that we succeeded. He brought in an amazing coaching staff that gave us the tools and the skills we needed to get there. He would never take any credit for the success that we had, but it is 100% him and the implementation that he had, and really the standards that he continued to hold us to and hold himself to. So from the culture change aspect, 2013, brand new coaching staff, some new players, some veteran players that kind of got back involved. But he was basically like, hey, in this first year, here's your task. You got to tell me where we're going. It's up to this team, this squad of individuals, to create a vision of what you want for this program. Not number one in the world, right? Not a results driven, but who do you want to be? How do you want to be seen? So what is your vision? So it took us a year of meeting after meeting and conversation and talking and talking. And for me, listening, because I wasn't so good at that before. I was used to like a mono-captain leadership system where it's like, this is what we do, we're going to do this. And I didn't have the answers in the lead up to 2012, but I was always asked for them. So I either made them up or made my best choice. But what Craig did was gave the power to the players, put us all on the same level, and was like, hey, as a player group, what do you want? And we defined, it took us a year, but we defined who we wanted to be and essentially what we wanted out of it. And that was the base that he rolled off of. Okay, well, if this is what you want, this is what it's going to take. And every step where he was helping us create our culture, he was giving us the power and accountability to do it as a player group. Every step that he took with us, it was, okay, well, if you guys want this, then we're going to have to do this. Okay, well, if you want this, then you're going to have to do this. And the values that we put on hard work and dedication and accountability, they kind of just grew naturally because of the vision that we had to be a united force trying to be number one in the world. So it was just really powerful to see when you give a group of motivated individuals the power to choose what they want, and you actually ask them and you're actually listening in a player group meeting. Everybody has a say. It doesn't matter if it's your first game or your 300th game. for your country, everybody has the same say, and it's the power of the group that allows us to achieve and challenge one another to get to what we want to achieve and where we want to go with it. So it was just the growth in my own mind, in my own leadership perspective was, wow, when you give information and power to individuals, what they choose to do together is so much more powerful than what individuals can choose without talking to one another.
Oh, I love that. Thanks for sharing that, because basically, you know, it looks like you were able to experience an autocratic, sort of top-down level of leadership previous, and then you bring on this new coach who understands leading through empowerment, which is really, that's the most powerful thing that exists today in leadership. And now you combine that with servant leadership, meaning like, hey, he understands that you guys don't work for him as the coach, that he's there to help enable and empower you. And I really love that he went into at least more detail of when you guys said where you wanted to go. He didn't just say, okay, execute. No, he played that intermediator role of providing those milestones that it was going to, hey, well, this is where you want to go. Well, here's the steps you need to take in order to be successful in that approach. And that's an example, that's an amazing example of a successful coach, right? And the coaches, they shouldn't be getting the credit. They really shouldn't be. And the coaches aren't rah, rah, rah. They are the enablers, right? The empowerers of great achievements. And that sounds like I'm sure that made a huge change in how you viewed yourself as a leader after witnessing that.
Yeah, 100%. That changed my mentality of what is possible and how to get group buy-in and how powerful group buy-in can be, right? Like I always give great examples of, not that they're great examples, but I have a lot of examples that I find to be so different of how I now approach situations. So I have strengths and weaknesses as a person and as a leader and as a player. I knew what those were, and I also challenged myself after the 2012 Olympics to know the strengths and weaknesses of my teammates, because my goal in learning from Craig, because his form of leadership and empowerment, my goal was to create an army of leaderful people, right? If I was part of a team and I was chosen to be the captain, the first time ever in my career where we actually voted on a captain. Craig came in and he's like, okay, I think he spoke with me before, but I was, in 2011 and 2012, I was appointed captain. So my coach was like, hey, you're going to be the captain. I'm like, okay, are you sure?
Okay, coach.
He's like, yeah, you talk all the time anyway. Yeah, like you're always talking, so that should probably be fine, right? But it wasn't until Craig came in, he's like, hey, what's been your process of selecting captains? I'm like, he just told me I was captain and I wear a captain's band. He's like, okay, well, I'd like to vote. Number one, I'd like to have a leadership group that we vote on. You guys define it. You tell me what that leadership group looks like, how often you want to change it. You guys define what the leadership group is, but part of the leadership group, I want to have like a vice captain and a captain. And so we got to define what the leadership group was and what individuals we wanted to make up of it. Because we didn't want the most leaderful people. We wanted it as a tool so that everybody can come into the leadership group and see what it means to have leaderful actions, or what it means to take care of things beyond just a player, right? To have more responsibilities as a leader. So he's like, we're going to select, what I'd like to do is ask the team who they want to be captain. He's like, I know that might affect you. I was like, I have no problem with that. I think that's great. So whether my teammates were just scared to not vote me as captain after being captain for 2 years, or
Are you that intimidating?
They did vote me. I'm so intimidating. They did vote me captain and we always we've revoted. I want to say maybe once a year. I don't even remember, but even up to maybe in 2016 we didn't vote. No, I think we did. But we always voted for vice captain, captain, and our leadership group throughout those 3-4 years. That was something that was consistent there. But it was, I think that alone, in just asking the player group, hey, who do you see is best able to lead you, or who do you want to lead you? And it can change 100%. It can change. But I think when they did select me, it was more of, okay, this can be a team decision, right? Like, I don't need to know all the answers for everything. I don't have to, I don't have to have every single answer. If I know my strengths and weaknesses, and I know my teammates' strengths and weaknesses, and I trust them that they want the best for the team, I'm gonna unload my responsibilities onto them when I know it's their strength. So like fashion, me and fashion, we're not great friends. I don't really care what we look like as a team, what uniform we're playing, what we're practicing in. But I had some teammates who really did care. They're like, I want to look fire. I want to look fresh. Let's do this. I'm like, great. You're going to take care of all of our uniform stuff. You let us know. You do the ordering. You do this, because number one, I didn't care. Number two, I didn't realize until I listened to my teammates how important that was on game day, that made them feel extra powerful. Like for me, I'm like, I can play in a penny. Yeah, I can play in a penny. I don't care. But I knew that some of my teammates did, and I'm like, hey, this is what you're going to own. You're going to do this. And what I found when I passed off more responsibilities is the people who complained the most about decisions that were made, that I then made to be leaders or responsible for that activity, they started to hear everybody else's complaints, and they're like, man, that's so annoying. I did this, this, and this. I'm like, yeah.
No appreciation.
Okay, well, like it started to make them aware of like, I didn't realize that my complaining sounded like this to you, but now when I hear everybody else complain to me, I now have a better appreciation. So if we could put everybody into that spot of where they are in charge of something, and they hear all the annoyances, all the goods, the bads, and everything, it opens their mind up to like, wow, I didn't realize like where the annoyances that we have with one another, and that we're all just trying to do our best. I mean, it was just so much awareness brought with the dumbest things, like what uniform color we're gonna be, but just giving the responsibility over to a teammate so that they can appreciate the full extent of what a responsibility like that means, I think helps create more leaderful people. And you do that over 2-3 years, and you finally get to the point where we're heading to the 2016 Olympics, where we have 20 individuals who at any given time can step up and lead. That's when you know that you're all thriving on the same page and you're ready for battle.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love those sound bites. And like, that's so relevant. That's why we love team sports, is because we can learn from them and be entertained at the same time, especially when we're able to have conversations with pros like you that have got those shared experiences. You know, we've had clients that like, they might talk about somebody in their department or division that's like, man, this person is the biggest pain in my neck. And my first response to them is like, you're not giving them enough responsibility. Like if somebody's being a pain in your neck, that means they are not working to their potential, period. Someone who's complaining is telling you right now that like they've got more on the plate, and like it always works. I loved doing that in the teams. Some, you know, like lieutenant would be like, so-and-so is like, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to have him run the next trip. And they'll be like, what? No, he's not capable of it. And then the next thing you know, this person absolutely is thriving. And then like you shared, now they have a shared experience of like, of empathy of like, oh man, now I know what it feels like when you're doing the morning, you know, plan for the day and everybody's rolling their eyes. Like, yeah, you get it. So cool. And to be able to get that from the sports component and that buy-in, because it is not just playing on the field, right? It is all those things derived between that team cohesion and the energy that you guys are able to foster and grow and trust one another. And those bonds, right, are now tighter because you guys are all working together on that end goal. That's really cool stuff. So I want to like, because all I can imagine is like, you know, you share this every day, you know, on the national team, going to the Olympics. It's a grind. What do you do to have fun by yourself or with the team? Like, how do you guys enjoy that grind and make light of those situations and keep some, you know, some lightness in your steps, so to speak, so you don't have this heavy rucksack on all the time about the Olympics, because it's an immense pressure.
Yeah, the challenge of the monotony and how to overcome it, honestly, with training for the Olympic Games, right? I guess I'm going to speak specifically to the 2016 team, which is, you know, we trained together for probably 3 years consistently. We had most of our player group involved. So the squad of players that we had, we were training for 3 years together. And I think at some point we took on the mentality of like that chip on our shoulder thing. We finished last at the 2012 Olympic Games. We were way more talented than that, but that's what the results gave. And when players came back and started to see the new culture that we were creating and the bigger vision that we were creating, they wanted to be part of it. What we wanted was to create a united force that people wanted to come and be involved with our team, right? The strength of the group is the quality of players who are trying to get into it.
Right.
If you can have the best players trying to get in, but the best of the best are already there, if they keep pushing, it has to keep pushing us. Otherwise, in a way you lose your spot. We were always the hardest working team. We were always the most fit. It's just technically, we weren't the most skilled. So what we did under Craig was say, okay, well, if we're the most fit, we're going to push the boundaries of fitness, and we're going to take on this whole new, we're going to work our butts off. We're going to be the strongest. We're going to be the fittest. We're going to run you into the ground, and hopefully we're going to be still standing where there's 1 second left and you're so tired that you can't save the goal and we can score. And then hopefully have the technical skills as a piece of it. But I think it was just taking pride in the fact that we were going to be the hardest working team in the world. Nobody was going to outwork us. That was our base. That was our value. That's where we got our pride point. And I think when we took on that definition of ourselves, we started to make excitement out of that random Tuesday in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, when nobody's watching. You have no one in the stands. Mom and dad are at home. No one knows you're training, but us 24 girls who are on the pitch. We took pride in the fact that the 2 hours of training we were going to do on that random Tuesday afternoon in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, when no one's watching, we were going to work our butts off. We were always pushing ourselves to the max when no one else was watching, because if we didn't do that, we were falling short of what we could achieve. And we knew that underdog mentality. We knew that we had to work that much harder than everybody else because we weren't as skilled. So if we wanted our skills to increase, we had to tire our bodies and our minds and force ourselves to still perform under those pressures. So we took a lot of pride in the fact that no one cared about us on any given day except us as a group. I mean, that's how strong our core group is I'm gonna challenge you to work hard. I'm tired. It's Thursday. We did 2-a-days on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we did conditioning in the afternoon practices, and then we would train. And it's like, when you're tired and you can't give any more, and again, no one's watching, your teammate's there next to you and they're pushing. And the more that teammate next to you can push, the more you're going to push, the more that next person pushes. So we escalated, and we really took on that identity of a pride for the monotony, right? Because to push through that monotony, to make it exciting and fun is difficult, right? Our bodies are hurting. Monday morning you wake up, you feel good, and then you do a hard lift session, and then you immediately feel like crap for the rest of the week, but that's what you have to push through. And I think embracing the suck in a way was something we did really well. And then knowing my teammates and knowing who on the team was the goofball, right? Everybody always has the different personalities, where when you can tell, like, keeping my finger on the pulse of the group, when I can tell, hey, we're kind of down and out, I know we're tired, we're in a really tough training block, I can go to my one teammate and be like, hey, like the class clown, right? And be like, hey, listen, in warm up today, we got to make people laugh. We got to keep this light. We got to keep us moving. And the girl comes out in a onesie giraffe suit and runs a lap to warm up in her giraffe onesie, right? Where it's just like something silly, something dumb. I was never great at that. When I was a younger player on the team, I was, because it was like I didn't really care. I had no responsibilities, whatever. But as I got older, it was like, okay, they're not looking to me to make everyone laugh. Like, I am who I am and how they see me, and I'm okay with that. But I have certain teammates where I'm like, hey, we need you. I need you to be competitive and warm up for the dumbest thing. Or going to our director of sports science who warmed us up and was like, hey, we got to play red light, green light for warm up. Or we got to play, just going back to playing stupid games, taking yourself out of the mindset of the pressure. And the more you can just have fun with what you're doing, the easier it is to embrace the monotony of what you're going through.
That's an absolutely brilliant play because like there's a lot of people that will default to like, oh, I need to back the valve off a little bit. You know, if we feel like that fun meter, quote unquote, is being pegged because of the monotony or how hard you're pushing, some of us are like, oh, I just need to dial it back a little bit, let them recharge and refresh. But the mental game that can play for serious competitors is like, oh, I'm not living up to these goals or whatever else. So if you can set the, you know, the environment to say, oh, no, we're still pushing hard. We're just finding new ways to lighten the load or the atmosphere around to still make it fun and engaging is such a powerful metric. You know, I like similar, like I would, when I was running the breacher course, they were long days, you know, for the folks out there in the heat in Virginia. And there'd be times where we'd be running hard evolutions. I could see the students were really faltering and their focus was driving. I'd be like, okay, cool, we're stopping. Kill house is cold. And they would think, oh yeah, we're shutting down for the day. Like, no, we're going to go to the shooting range. We're going to shoot skeet for 2 hours, you know? And then lo and behold, after 2 hours of skeet, guess what? These gentlemen all got their energy back. And then we go back to the house runs and knock it out of the park, you know? And it's like, and now they've just leveled up. You know, it's like that type of leadership and that insight to be able to make those pivots at those critical times is, that's a gift. And that's awesome that you're able to kind of bring that in. And that's a great testament to driving that leadership and staying focused on that end state goal and not losing, right? Because anytime we ratchet back, we turn that valve back. Me as a leader, I'm like, okay, that's a loss. Like I just, you know, I had an outcome I wanted to drive to, and now I had to back off it, which means I overextended. And so if you can find those tools as a leader to kind of keep people focused on there, that's huge. And then everybody's looking at, you know, Lauren like, wow, she gets it. Like she knows how to keep us motivated and engaged, which has got to be the long game. I mean, you're a professional athlete for over 12 years, yeah, between college and the Olympics. That's a long tour for any athlete. And then, you know, what you guys, I mean, I imagine field hockey is not different than soccer. You're probably running 8 to 10 miles in a game, I'm assuming, you know, and, you know, all the practices and all that stuff. I mean, it is hard on your body, and to be able to keep that sort of motivation going is really remarkable. So how about,
and I'd love to say that I was the smartest leader of like having fun and realizing like, and more like, oh, we need to have fun. Again, Craig Parnham and learning from him, and like he knows how hard we are working. We couldn't afford to not push every single day, right? We weren't good enough to be able to do that. So you didn't have the ability to back off. I think as a coach, because I've coached a few teams, you start to feel bad. You're like, I know you guys hurt. I know this is tough. I know I'm asking a lot of you. When you give them an excuse to be able to underachieve for even one practice, you can't really live with yourself as that goes into it. So exactly what you said is, how can I reset their minds? For athletes, it's pretty easy. Just put them into a dumb competition, like red light, green light. Swear to God. From 18-year-olds to 34-year-olds, right? We go to start, everyone's tired. He's like, okay, we're going to play red light, green light. And if you get kicked out, you do that. Like, just put it, or we're going to play tag, or we're going to, once it goes to a competition, you get out of how bad does my body hurt and what is this? And you do what you're supposed to do, which is prepare yourself for the training. And so it's just, that's when I'm learning these mindset tricks, right? Of, oh, I need to tune into how are my teammates feeling? Because we can't afford to have a bad practice or to like take our foot off the pedal. How do I optimize our mindset going into the training session? And I learned that from the coaching staff that, I mean, as a player, when they were like, let's do this, we had a stupid rubber chicken. And someone brought that out. And they're like, okay, here's a game. Chuck the chicken as far as you can. And these players run around here and see how many you can get before that team gets to the chicken. Then they chuck it. Like the dumbest games you can think of that really gets you moving, because you're like, oh my God, let's get to that chicken.
Love it. Change the game. You know, when you've got monotony, and that applies to all aspects of life, because many people in their jobs, they've got goals to attribute and to accomplish and everything, but they're like on a daily grind as well. And if there's a way for leaders out there to kind of change the game a little bit, make it a little bit more exciting and new and fresh, that's a brilliant play. Thank you for helping me relive some of those memories too. That's great.
Yeah.
So you come back from the 2016 Olympics, the whole future lays out in front of you. Like, walk me through sort of that I can't even imagine the head game, the identity crisis. You know, I've spent 29 9 years in the military, SEAL teams and everything. I was fortunate. My step down happened gradually because as I gained experience and rank, if you will, in the SEAL teams, my operator roles were less and less and less, all the way to the last 4 years. I was just flying a desk as a command master chief. So I really was transitioning out of my role for about 5 or 6 years before I got out. So I didn't have the identity of this SEAL operator. And now three-time Olympian, multiple national titles, world titles, all these things. Now you're at this like decision point. Okay, what's next for me? Kind of how did that impact you, and how did you sort of identify and hold on to some of your identity while letting others go and then moving on to your next chapter?
Well, I too feel fortunate. So you said you had about 4 or 5 years of, to redefine yourself and
Right,
having the
yeah.
space and time to be able to do it. I knew in 2015 that I was retiring after the 2016 Olympics. Physically, I think I was just starting to reach my peak as an athlete. I probably should have done another Olympics, but my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, was in the military, and
Also, yeah,
we
was a
had been
teammate of
long
mine.
distance since. Yes, you were his command master chief, I believe, when he first moved to Virginia Beach. But we met in Coronado, California, and we were doing distance since 2011. When he was in Virginia Beach and I was in Pennsylvania, and I was at the point where, again, you make a lot of sacrifices when you're training. At least for us for the Olympics, because in a team sport, you can't live wherever you want. You have to live wherever the centralized training program is. And for us, it was Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So I didn't have a choice of where I could live, and he didn't have a choice of where he could live, being in the military. So I was just at a point where I was ready to make sacrifices for the life that we would want. And so for the 2016, I knew after the Olympics that wherever he was going to move, because he was getting, what do you call it, restation? I don't know. I don't know enough military
New
terms,
orders, yeah, or
even though I've
stationed
been
somewhere
around
else.
it
Yeah.
yeah. Yep. So he was, so I knew that he was going to move, and I was like, wherever you go, I'm going. Like I'm done after the 2016. I was done with putting in that sacrifice. So I was lucky that I had a year, that I knew I was going to be done. And so I had the ability to be fully focused on, what I needed as a player, what our team needed. We're doing the Olympics. I had a part-time job in the marketing department of a flooring company that I had worked for 2 years previously, where they said, hey, after the Olympics, if you want a job with us, you can have it. You can work remotely. So I basically had pressure. I was like, okay, I have a job. I know that I'm done I don't even remember when the Olympics were, September, August of 2016. I don't really know. But I knew when those were done that my playing career was over, but I could, wherever I was moving, wherever my husband was going to move, I could move and I would have a job. So a lot of the pressures were off, right? I didn't have to worry about what was my job going to be. I could just focus on what I wanted to accomplish, what I still needed to accomplish. And when the last game was the quarterfinals, we lost to Germany, and it was really weird. It was a weird game because, number one, we had full faith that we were going to win. Germany just had a great plan that took us off of our game plan, and we lost. And it was so weird because at that moment, I was the most proud. I was like a proud mom. Again, I am not yet a mother, but I was so proud of my team in where we had come from the 2012 finishing last to where we were at 2016 from a culture standpoint. The growth that we had, the team that I was a part of, I was so proud of all of us for getting there. We didn't medal, which was our goal. Our goal was to medal at the Olympics, and we fell short of that. But from a culture standpoint, it was the greatest team I had ever been part of. And I felt accomplished in that. So it was the end of my career. Of course, I'm like, crying. I'm the last person to leave the field because I was just, this is the last time I'm going to wear a USA jersey and, all those emotions. But I had no regrets. I got to leave the sport that I loved healthy, number one, because a lot of people don't get to do that. I had a shoulder surgery that I had to do, but I was leaving healthy. I was leaving on my own right, so it wasn't the coach saying like, "Hey, Lauren, you're kind of getting old. We want to respect you, but like you're gonna, like you're gonna have to kind of leave." It was my choice. I was happy about it. I got to really embrace the last year of playing like all in with my teammates and all that we would accomplish. So when I stopped, it wasn't sudden. I could be prepared. And I think what helped my transition so much is I hated being defined as an athlete. So anytime, even like as a student athlete, you had the student part. I was pretty good at school. When I was on the national team, I got my master's in nonprofit management. I usually worked a part-time job. I wanted to use my mind. I wanted to make sure that I was defining other parts of me that weren't just the athletic field. So it wasn't just I was an athlete, I was a field hockey player, and that was it. I had to prove to myself that I could do other things. I wanted to use my mind. I went back to get my master's while I was working part-time. I was super stressed while doing it. I was like, why are you training full-time for the Olympics, have a part-time job, and getting your master's degree online? Like, I mean, my poor roommates, sometimes I'd come home and just like probably take it out on them.
You darn
But it's because I had to
overachievers.
prove to, I know. I know, and they're overachieving too, like they were Olympic at, but I'd come home and I'd be 5 hours of work in our film room. I'd come home at 10 p.m. and they're sitting on the couch, like recovering from our training. And I'm like hated them because I was like, you guys don't have schoolwork to do. And they're like, yeah, because we chose not to. Like, this is your choice, Lauren. But it was something that I needed to do to make sure I was using my mind, or to make sure that I couldn't be defined by just one single thing. And I think, and I didn't, it's not that I knew transitioning out it would help me, but I did not struggle with my transition from being an Olympian to now trying to find a job and figure out that, because I think throughout my athletic career, I gave myself slivers of definitions of, okay, you can work in an office space. You can be in a marketing department when you don't really have the skills to do it. You can work at Home Depot. I worked at the Home Depot paint department. You can do that. You can put in the time. Like, you can feel worth outside of the field hockey pitch. And I think that's what was most important and really allowed me to transition. I kind of feel bad saying it, but pretty seamlessly. Because when I got back from 2016, I had shoulder surgery. Fast forward, the company that I worked for that said that I would have a job, the day before I moved to Reno, Nevada, they were like, actually, we can't have a remote employee. We're not ready for it. So basically, they took back their job. So I had to start all over, which honestly was totally fine, because they gave me the security, a false security now, but they gave me the security of, yep, you're gonna be fine. You don't have to worry about a job. I could fully focus on my training. And then when it came time to actually take the job, they took it away. But ultimately, I was in an okay headspace where I'm like, I respect your business decision. I totally get it. They were super gracious about, they're like, if we will help you in however you need, just let us know how we can help. But I was like, okay. And I just like put my nose to the grindstone and just started figuring out different things that I would want to do. I said yes to any opportunity that came across and found the job that I've now been with for 5 years. So I feel like it was pretty seamless, but I think it's the personal development that I learned from a child all the way up to, my Olympic career, of growth mindset, process oriented, overcoming adversity, tackling challenges, and just being okay with, you're going to stumble upon things and you have the skills to figure out, how you're then going to redefine success and achieve it.
Yeah, and what I hadn't shared earlier is Lauren and I met in March of 2017. So now I'm kind of doing the mental time log and recognizing that, like, when you and I
Yeah.
first met, you had literally just pivoted from being on the Olympic team, right? Because you finished the Olympics 2016,
Yep.
the end of the summer, early September.
Fall of 2016.
And then
Yep.
in March, there we are up at the Tuck Next Step program, Dartmouth's business school, doing their, it's a 2.5 week program where they've got Olympians and veterans and high performing athletes to help us pivot and transition into that next role that we have. And you made such an impression on me. You seemed very grounded, assured of yourself, And what really stood out to me was your eagerness to learn and share and be vulnerable. And I didn't like if you were to line up, our entire cohort, I think we had 63 people, I think, in the cohort, and we were the best cohort at Tuck Next Step program, by the way. But we had gelled so quickly because we had these similar, drivers in our life. One is, we wanted to excel in the roles that we had, and then two, we were on the same similar transition in our life, getting ready to pivot from something that was very predictable and linear to this unknown world of civilian, because most of us come in the military when you're young. Olympians, you guys all go from the Olympians from very young age, so it's really the only world we know. But if I were to line you up amongst the cohort, it would not have been easy for me to pick you out as an Olympian. And it's not because of your stature or whatever else. It was really just the way that you carried yourself. Like you were a total focused pro, vulnerable, and you didn't have a chip on your shoulder. Not that anybody else in the cohort did. Everybody was phenomenal there, but it was just really remarkable. You stood out to me because you were assertive, yet kind and compassionate and vulnerable, and your eagerness to learn and share and then help others. Like I watched when we did our group activities and stuff like that. You were the natural leader, getting your hands in and helping throughout those processes as well as the rest of the cohort. And I think that was remarkable. And then, very fortuitous is that I had no idea that, because I think at that point you didn't share until like near the end of the cohort. You're like, hey, do you know so-and-so? I'm like, yeah. I was like, well, like he and I are, engaged to be married or whatever else. So I was like, get the heck out of here. Like I had just left that team and, helped him earn a wetsuit for him to so he could crush more of the swims at the team and everything. It was all like really fortuitous stuff. And then fast forward in 2020, you joined the team at Victory Strategies with us. So really awesome. So, just kind of tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, with your current full-time job, and then Victory Strategies, whatever else, like kind of where your headspace is at now and where you're looking forward to in the future.
Yeah, well, first off, thank you. That was so nice of you to say. That Tuck Next Step program was really cool because again, it was the first time that they have ever done it. So we were all kind of taking a chance, but it came at a great time in my career because I had just lost a job that, I thought that I had. So it was kind of like, okay, let's just start over and let's just figure out what these things out. And it was such a cool experience because it was a space. Really 2.5 weeks, you're not going to learn business stuff, but it was giving you, soft skills of, hey, I think they were giving you value, right? Listen, you guys are all elite people and everybody's going to want to hire you, and you should go into the private sector thinking that, right? And so to me, it was just a great experience to open up to hear everybody's stories, to learn certain things, but just to realize there's so many opportunities out there that we could look forward to taking advantage of, and just kind of saying yes to whatever came about out of that, which was really cool. And to meet people, if there's 63 of us, to meet people who were all in the same boat, and just to be able to use one another as we're bouncing ideas off of it, and keep connections like you and I did, and you coming in about a year ago and pulling me onto Victory Strategies. So actually, while I was at Tuck Next Step, I got a phone call from who was my former boss, who brought me into the company, and basically was talking about a sales position. I was like, in my mind, I was like, that sounds awful. I don't want to be in sales. Most of my siblings are in sales. My dad was in sales, and I'm just not a salesy person, right? It just sounds sleazy to me. But because I was at Tuck Next Step, I was like, you say yes to every opportunity. Just keep an open mind, explore it as an opportunity to learn more about yourself, what you do want, what you don't want, what you can be, and what opportunities might be. So I met with him. I listened to him on the phone. We met. I work for a commercial insurance company. We sell commercial insurance, life and disability. It's federated insurance. And my exploration of federated wasn't necessarily, hey, what's my job? What am I going to be doing? What am I going to be making? It was, hey, who is federated as a company? What's the culture behind it? How do you support me and help me achieve the growth that I want to in a career, right? Because it was my first major career, or my first full-time gig out of being an athlete. So because I was so confident in who I was, I knew my strengths and weaknesses. I knew what I knew, and I knew what I didn't know. I was interviewing them from a culture standpoint of, okay, I know an environment that I'm going to thrive in, and I want to make sure you can fulfill that environment. I don't care what it is. Turns out it's selling insurance, which is fine, which is what I do now. So I have a territory where I'm just meeting with clients and prospects. I'm helping them optimize their insurance programs, mitigate risk in risk management, and just trying to bring more clients on board. I've been doing that. I got hired in May of 2017, and I've been doing that ever since.
Yeah. And it's funny, you sneer a little bit when you talk salesy. I know initially when I came on board Victory Strategies, let alone take, the chief executive officer slot, that like I had this sort of like, oh, sales. But the reality is like we're all selling. We're selling ourselves, our
Yeah,
personal
yep.
brand, our mindset, our influence, all those other things. And like the more you kind of get from that is like as long as you can believe in the service you're providing, it becomes a lot easier. But I remember having the same sort of reaction to like, oh, sales. But then I find it very fulfilling as long as I'm confident that, we're delivering a service to people and what they need and meeting them what they need and everything like that. So yeah, that's a pretty cool transition. And so Reno for a while now. It's like, I mean, I haven't gotten out there to visit you guys yet. I've got some friends out in Reno. I love that town. They
I
call it like
know.
Little Las Vegas. It's just, it's so much fun out there and relaxed. And you got you've got Tahoe right there, and then you've got the high Sierras and all that stuff. I mean, it's one of my favorite
Don't
places
tell
in the country.
people. We don't
Yeah.
need more people here. Don't tell them. But there's
So,
a great, I mean, as you know, you have friends out here, there's a SEAL community out, a hidden community because it used to be a hidden gem, right?
oh
We're
yeah.
the
Yeah. We
biggest
used to
little
train
city
out
in
in
the world.
Hawthorne. Yeah.
I had, yep. Oh gosh, yeah, that's part of my sales territory, which I haven't really been there very
I
often.
mean,
But
Hawthorne
yeah,
is literally, it is
when my
literally like,
husband,
it's literally like the ghost towns in the old Clint Eastwood spaghetti westerns. It's the, maybe a little bit more modern buildings and whatnot, but it is like going back to like 1935. It's amazing.
yep, you have a few of those little rural towns throughout northern Nevada because that again is my sales territory. But when my husband took the position, I mean, it was going to be Alaska or Reno, and he's like, okay, I'm it's Fallon, Nevada, but we didn't. He's like, I don't want to live there. So in 2016, he took the spot. I moved fall of 2016, and I had no idea what it's like. He's like, it's the high desert. I'm like, I don't know what that means.
I happen to know the guy
But
that
we
helped
love
him
it out
negotiate
here.
those
It's
orders, by the
great.
way.
Oh yeah. Well, you did great. I'm just, loving it. Unfortunately, everyone else is finding out about it, but you get 4 seasons. I mean, I went skiing on Sunday, October 31st. Like, I was on the mountain.
That's
Now, was it
amazing.
great snow? No, but it was nostalgic. So, and then, we have a 65, 70-degree day today that's like sunny and beautiful. So, we love the area here. It's been great. I'm a commitment phobe. I don't know if you could tell from my stories, but I never commit to, that next year or it's just always what's my quality of life? What do I enjoy doing? Am I happy? Am I being fulfilled? And as long as I have those, I'm like, yeah, cool. Because my family's like, are you going to be, my family's still in Philadelphia. So like, are you going to be there forever? I'm like, let's talk about the word forever. Because it's kind of scary. Who knows?
If
I
they're
could
still
wake
in the
up
Philly
one
area,
day
that's
and be like,
awesome.
I just can't stand it. Yeah, yeah, they are. They're probably like an hour east of you. We're about an hour north of Philadelphia, Bucks County.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, that's not too far from where I grew up in Westchester, Chadds Ford,
Yeah,
Pennsylvania there. So very cool.
yeah.
All right. Anything that we didn't discuss that you want to kind of cover down on or any final points for closing remarks?
No, I mean, I just, when I get to hear myself talk, it sounds weird, but you always hear more values that you didn't really realize you had. So I always enjoy speaking with, someone like yourself where we can just bounce things off one another and just, to me, what stands out the most is just the importance of having a growth mindset and accepting challenges as they come. Because I think if you can develop that at any age, but especially at a young age, which is why I think being involved in team sports is so important. You have every aspect of what you're going to need to succeed in life because we're all part of teams in our professional lives. Typically, you're having to work with others. You're having to read the room, you're having to react, you're having to just so many things that I feel like we can learn from team sports. And I'm realizing how important that is in someone's development, whether it be child development or professional development, is having that growth mindset, accepting challenges, and knowing that most of the fun is going to come from the process of overcoming those challenges and growing as a person. I mean, that's where I now feel like I find success, right? I'm no longer going for an Olympic dream. I'm living a life, but that is, in the professional world, work. But what I love is working with people, talking about leadership, looking at the development aspect and seeing why people succeed and why people don't. I could talk for hours about that with you.
Yeah. So I had read one of Kevin Hart's books recently, and he had this quote or saying, or even his mantra, that like once he recognized that all life is a game, like that was his turning point on like how he could build his life. And that's something I've been recently adopting because it's so true. And like your aspect, even though you're a pro, you're professional, you're goal oriented, the reality is you're always in it for the fun, right? With the drive to win and make achievements and all those things. But when you can have that growth mindset, but then approach life, every aspect of your life is this game that you make choices on how you're going to navigate through it can be so empowering, and like some of those takeaways that I really love is like, hey, that underdog mentality is not a setback. You've got to apply your growth mindset to it and use that as your advantage to drive out your competitors in that realm. And then focusing on the love of the game. And I really, we talk about it a lot, but that team first mentality, like if you're part of an organization, like you've got to inspire people to kind of have buy-in to that team first mentality, because your self-care will come along with that. And I think I love that touch point you talked about when like, hey, you wanted that 2012 team or the 2008, 2012 team to all of those returners to make it to the Olympic team. Like that was your goal. It wasn't about you and it was about them. And that resiliency, that story from your running test is just incredible when you got to Wake Forest and, you finished last, but you didn't suffer from it. You didn't have a self-defeating mindset of like you weren't worthy, and you continued to thrive and use it within that growth mindset. And, when you find yourself in the doldrums of a grind, there's ways to add fun and inspiration to change up that monotony, and just change the game. Just change the game. The outcomes are still kind of the same there, but you're still driving and growing, and you're not turning that valve down, which could actually diminish this mindset that your players have there. That's just amazing stuff.
Yeah, and when you focus like Kevin Hart, hilarious, love him. The fact of like putting life as a game, I love that because it's like, why do we play games? For enjoyment, right? I mean, yes, like there is going to be a result. You're gonna win or you lose. But I think what I've found as I continue to talk about my experiences is it was always the challenge. Just the fact that there is a game to play is exciting. And it means there's opportunity. And you're going to make good choices and you're going to make bad choices, and they're going to be right and they're going to be wrong. But whatever it is, you're going to be doing something. So as you're doing it, why not have as much enjoyment as you can? Because, like no one's getting out of this world alive. We know that. So enjoy that process part of it. Like that's what I think is so exciting is like, if we're playing a game, the fact that we're playing something is where I want to find enjoyment from.
Yeah.
That's, there's going to be results. I get it. But if it's always process oriented and growth mindset, you're never really at that final result, right? There's going to be results that come, but it's forever ongoing.
And our days and lives are made up of the choices we make. And so like, how much fun is it? Like I just had this vision while you were talking about like, oh, if I go down to my garage refrigerator where I've got some soda for, because my son and I allow him to have one soda a day, right? But sometimes I have a Coca-Cola. Well, now I can look at that Coke and like, okay, I've got decision A, Coca-Cola or eat an apple. The game that I'm playing, I'd rather eat an apple and leave the Coke there for my son, right? And there's just like, and you can do that throughout the day. And at the end of the day, be like, net positive because I made good choices today towards the end state of the game that I'm playing in my life. So lots of fun. Laura, this was so much fun.
Even if you do choose that Coca-Cola, if you choose that Coca-Cola at the end of the day, you're like, ooh, life decision, was that bad? Even if it's like not a great day, you're like, cool, guess what? That game's happening tomorrow.
That's right, exactly. I get to relive this, revisit it tomorrow. It's amazing. I love it. So, Lauren,
It's
this was a
great.
blast. So much fun. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And we absolutely love having you on Victory Strategies and looking forward to the future together. So, thanks so much. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Victory Podcast, where we explore life, leadership, and journey. Please follow us on Instagram at the Victory Podcast, as well as LinkedIn, and our website at victorystrategies.com, where you can also follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn. Have a phenomenal day, everyone. And until next time, I'm your host, Bob Newman, telling you all right. Have a phenomenal day. And if you're still listening, why not tune in to the previous episode if you haven't given it a listen yet? Cheers.